What do all women have in common? No, this is not the beginning of some terrible joke. This is serious. Last week, we made the pretty bold claim that all men everywhere have the same core desires hardwired into their heart. They don't have any choice. And it is these desires that lead them, if followed correctly, into what it means to be a man. Well, this week, we're going to look at the feminine side of things. I'll lay it out there. We believe that all women everywhere were built by their Creator with certain core desires hardwired into their heart. And it's their Creator's design that these desires would lead them into what it really means to be a woman. And if you're a woman, or if you would like to understand women, which I think covers everybody, this is important stuff. So stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of the R3 Podcast, Rescue, Rebuild, Restore. As always, this is a presentation of Operation Restored Warrior, an encounter online. I'm Shane, and I am here with some wonderful ladies. I'm here with Sarah and Kim, and I'm just refreshed, because if you've been watching the R3 Podcast, it can be a little man heavy. And so I'm super excited to have these powerful women on the podcast. So if you would, I'm just going to throw the ball to each one of you, and you can let us know a little bit about yourself. I mean, super Reader's Digest, but mostly, how did you get connected with Operation Restored Warrior? I'm going to hit you first, Sarah.
Well, thank you so much for having me, first and foremost, Shane. I appreciate it. My story in getting to ORW is actually quite long, so I'll try to keep it as brief as I can. The short story is that a friend of mine, who was a retired sergeant major, I'm just going to get right into it. We're about to go deep really, really fast.
60.
And I myself am also a retired first sergeant from the Marine Corps, but that's how I knew this retired sergeant major friend of mine. He actually ended up taking his life in 2018. And during the funeral and everything, I put out a message on social media to a bunch of our Marine Corps brothers and sisters saying, hey, anyone who wants to come stay with me, I just bought this big Victorian house that I'm restoring. Come stay with me throughout the funeral, because it was going to be throughout the whole weekend. And so two of my Marine Corps buddies who I was on the drill field with, we were all drill instructors together.
Nice.
They showed up to my house. I hadn't seen them for years and years and years, since the 1900s. That gives you any idea how old I am. But they showed up for the funeral, and there were a lot of laughs. There were a lot of cries. It was a very healing time, and it was a very sad time. It was, we were all devastated, the way it all went down. But I noticed one thing about my friend Troy. He was different than the rest of us. Even though we were all so sad, he was different than I remembered him in the Marine Corps. He all of a sudden had this peace about him. And we were all tearing it up and drinking and doing all the things that Marines do when they're mourning the loss of a friend. And I was like, what's different with you, Troy? Why are you different? You're not getting drunk like the rest of us. You seem happy yet sad. You have a peace about you. What's different? And he said, I found Jesus. And I said, no way.
Mic drop.
I said, you are lying to me. And I was just like, it just occurred to me throughout the whole thing, because I had been searching too. Even though I believed in God, I was dabbling in other religions, and I was not finding any freedom or any truth in anything. And I said, Troy, I want to know Jesus like you know Jesus, because I've never really felt the intimacy that he was explaining to me. And So we went about our way, and he said, "Well, don't worry, Sarah. I went to this organization called ORW, and we're looking for a female veteran team, and you're going to be a facilitator one day." And I said,
Brand
"Troy,
new to
me?
Jesus, you're going to lead teams.
No way." I said, "Troy, me in ministry does not compute. I will
Mhm.
spontaneously combust. Not going to happen." So what ends up happening about a year later, I end up going through an ORW drop zone. But this particular drop zone was a little bit different than the normal ones because they were looking for female facilitators also, because they wanted, it was their desire, the team's desire, to actually start a healing journey for women, because
Yeah.
they didn't currently have anything like that. So I went through my drop zone, and that was kind of like the intent. The team was like, "Hey, if it's going to work out, Jesus will make it work out. If not, we'll just keep on searching for facilitators." I I had no desire to do any of that. But anyways, my drop zone experience, when I got to my drop zone, it was actually in Lake Tahoe. I didn't really have many expectations. I was like, "Okay, this, we're gonna have fun and do some things, do some kumbaya stuff." And, I was just
Maybe a drum circle,
just
how
kind
it
of open
goes.
to whatever. And I was, by that time, I was searching for Jesus, and I was finding a lot of him, but not the whole bit. And I brought with me to my drop zone a lot of mental illness. I was on about 6 different medications for just a myriad of things that the VA told me I had. The VA told me I had ADHD, that I had PTSD, combat stress, sleeping disorders, anxiety, you name it, I had it, and I was on a medication for it. And so I went through this kind of healing journey, and I'm not going to go into explicit detail about everything that happens at a drop zone, but throughout my experience, I met Jesus. I for real met Jesus. And there was no possible way that it was a coincidence or that it was just a feel good experience. It was a very real healing and intimacy experience. And I left that drop zone. Over time, I got delivered from those medications. I am no longer on any medications for mental health, anything. And, I'm not saying anything against, that if people need that, but that was my experience because Jesus filled those voids and healed me from that and delivered me from that. It didn't happen right away. It kind of happened over a few months, but that was just proof to me that Jesus cares, that
Yeah.
he cares about the things that are going on with me and the things that I'm struggling with. And I was able to fill those voids with nothing but Jesus. There's a lot more things that happen during the drop zone. For instance, hearing from God. I
Yeah.
didn't know that we could actually hear. I didn't know that he was a God who speaks. I thought I pray to him, and then I throw the dice and I just hope for the best. I thought that was pretty much what if something bad happens, I cry out to God. I didn't know that it was supposed to be a two-way relationship, that it was
Yeah.
it was both of us together on this journey. This whole time I was like, "Oh, I'm the one that speaks and you listen, and then I just hope for the best,
At
and
least I
that's it."
hope you're listening. Maybe you're listening.
Yeah,
Who knows?
exactly. And I was also struggling with a lot of identity problems with regard to being in the Marine Corps for 20 years. All of my identity was in that. I was a warrior, I was a leader, I was a teacher, I was a mentor, I was a coach. I was mom, I was dad, I was the prison warden, I was I was everything. And I retired from the Marine Corps in 2015 after 20 years, and all of a sudden I'm not important anymore. This is the identity that I'm struggling
Mm.
with. I'm not important anymore. Nobody needs me. What do I do next? Who am I even? What is my purpose now? And I had been divorced for several years since 2008. And so I was also alone and parenting my teenage son. So it was even, I couldn't even necessarily dive into being a parent because I don't know if you guys know this, but teenagers don't seem to want to have anything to do with their parents.
I have
So
a few of them.
I even felt like I wasn't needed by my own son because he was
Mm.
establishing his independence, and that he's not wrong for that. That's what they do. He was becoming his own man. And so even that couldn't be something that I fully dove into to claim my identity. So I was searching for that, my new identity, my new purpose. And throughout this wild roller coaster of following Jesus and finding him and having him meet me where I was at, I found my identity in him.
Yeah.
And there is nothing, absolutely nothing that could happen that can take that away from me. Because from the beginning, I was a child of God. From the beginning, he knew I was his.
She is preaching and teaching even now. Man, I love hearing that story. See,
from the jump.
Yeah. I've not heard her story. And so, Sarah, I really love that. I love the fact that you went with all of these severe mental health issues. I feel like that's really important to kind of camp out on just for a minute, because never in the history of ever have more people had more mental and emotional issues, more diagnoses, more therapy and drugs that they're taking to cope with life than at this time. Mm-hmm. And for you to say, well, he didn't heal me right away. He healed me, over a period of months. I mean, those things that you listed aren't healed over a period of months. Actually, they're not healed, period. They're just managed for the rest of your life, if you believe the common wisdom. But now you're delivered and healed from those things. I think it's super awesome to just remember that Jesus does that. And this experience that we call the drop zone is just, it's not human magic. It's just a thing that God has chosen to use and to show up in people's lives and to bring healing. Man, I really love that story.
Thank you. And there's one more thing that I even left out just real briefly that I'd like to touch on is the fact that we live in a fallen world, and there's a spiritual war going on that so many people deny the existence of. And Jesus didn't ascend to heaven without giving us tools to deal with all that spiritual warfare. And after I left the drop zone, I started to understand what a spiritual battle really was. And I was given the tools in order to deal with that thing, because the devil, and all his minions, they're just like a little gnat. They're like a little gnat compared to what Jesus does. And I didn't realize that. It was like this big bad boogeyman that I thought I had no control over. And according to Jesus, giving us all power and authority to trample over these things, that's not the truth. Like we have the authority because of what Jesus does. He gave us the Holy Spirit, and so we get to do these things, and we don't have to live in this bondage anymore. So enough on that. Just wanted to touch on that.
I mean, I love that you touched on that, because I have been working with the Operation Restored Warrior team for about the past year, developing a resource called The Spiritual Battlefield. And it's going to release, I don't know when you're encountering this podcast, but it's going to release in February of 2025. So for us recording this podcast, like right now, it's coming out. And so that's a place that you can go and learn about these spiritual tools. Like, what is the spiritual war that I can't see, but maybe I'm affected by, and how do I deal with it? Kim, I'm watching, I'm just watching you while Sarah's sharing her story, and you're just beaming. Obviously everything she's saying is resonating with you. You have been on, I think, 3 or 4 of our podcasts early, and it's been a while since I've seen you. I'm glad that you're back. I just want to give you a little bit of a moment. If you would, you can comment on what Sarah has been sharing, or you can share a little bit, just a refresher of what your drop zone experience was like. I'll also put a link into the podcast notes for you guys to go back and see some of Kim's earlier episodes. So I'm throwing the ball to you, Kim.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us be here and sharing our stories and all that God's done. But the before I get into that, the reason that I'm beaming is because I am so proud of Sarah. I am so proud. And she tells you when she came to the drop zone in Lake Tahoe, I actually came to that one too. Um, but when she came there were just a number of things that she had just that she was just struggling with. And when she left, she was a different person. And so when I came there, I was already like a teacher and a discipleship group leader and but of young girls. And so some of the girls, like you try to tell them, okay, this is the way that you want to go. You don't want to go this way. And you try to help them along the path and they try to do the exact opposite of what you're saying.
Imagine that.
Sarah was the complete imagine that. Sarah was the complete opposite. Like she was like, well, what about this? And I tell her, and she's like, yes, let's go for it. And so when she said this about that trampling on the way, however she said it, I was just like, oh my goodness. I was telling her that very verse, Luke 10:19. I'm like, no, this is what it says. And this is what we're going to stand on. And the fact that she's still repeating that to herself all these years later, I love it. I mean, it's a testament to the power of God's word, but it's also a testament to a heart that was hungry and really received. So it was, yeah. So I'm just so proud of her. I'm so proud of her. So that's really why I'm doing. But
awesome.
Anyway, okay. So my road to the drop zone. So again, as I mentioned, I was a discipleship group leader. And so I had this nonprofit organization where at the time, I was helping young girls like learn who they really were and finding their identity in Jesus and a number of other things. And along the way, started out, the girls were 12 and then they grew and some of them got pregnant along the way. And so and then they started bringing their friends who also had kids. So I had a lot of girls who were single moms. And so I started to notice that their kids, they were struggling because they didn't have their dads in their lives. So we did a lot of events for the moms and the kids. And I was just like, wait, if we help the moms and the kids get better and we don't do anything about the dads, then the kids will go to be with the dads and then they'll just get messed up again. I'm like, this is not a good idea. So I said that I wanted to do something for fathers, especially, honestly, maybe this was a little selfish. I wanted to do something for the fathers of those kids in particular and just let it spread and maybe some other kids in the community. But that was how I started looking for, we were planning to do an event and I just started looking for something that would like really impact them and impact them and be something that would actually change them. It wouldn't just be, oh, this was nice. I went to this event. I met these superstar athletes and they said this and they said that, but nothing happened on the inside of these men. I couldn't be a part of that. So I started looking, and that's when I started looking, but more than I had myself and another woman, we just started praying for like 3 weeks. We were praying and asking the Lord, what are we going to do? We can't just do like business as usual. I just can't spend money on that. And so after 3 weeks of consistently praying, she said, I saw this movie. And in this movie, there was this organization that does this stuff for these men. She's like, I don't remember the organization, but I remember the movie. And so she told me the movie, and it was, so now I've forgotten the name of the movie.
Holy Ghost Reborn.
Holy Spirit, yes, that was it.
And I'll put a link for that in the podcast notes. So if you guys want to check it out, it's definitely worth a watch.
Yes. So in the beginning, I kept watching. I'm like, where's this group? Where's this group? And I was like, this cannot be it. And so then finally, when it got to that part, I said, yes. I was like, oh God. I was like, yes. So, and that's how I reached out to Chief. And so from there, he said, well, and I had like tons of ideas. I was like, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? You guys can come here and do that. And he goes, well, why don't you actually experience a drop zone for yourself? I was like, okay, sure. So
Chief, by the way, is Chief Paul Lavelle. who is the founder of Operation Restored Warrior.
Yes, indeed. So that's the drop zone that I went on in Lake Tahoe. And so again, a number of things. I'd been involved in ministry, deliverance ministry, and a number of those other things for
Yeah.
a good period of time. So when I got there, I was like, this is great. They're hitting all the points and da 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 da. And I was so pleasantly surprised to meet so many of these beautiful women. Just, it blessed my heart so much. Blessed me tremendously. So that's how I got there.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So both of you have talked about something that we talked about last week with the men of Operation Restored Warrior. And this is the main reason I wanted to have you ladies here is I want to talk about this subject that you keep bringing up. It's identity.
Mm-hmm.
There is each one of us have a very unique and individual identity. However, God created us in his image. Like the Bible verse actually goes, he created us in his image, male and female in his image, he created us. And what we talked about last week is this idea that men in general and women in general have an identity that only together reflects the fullness of who God is. And so men and women have to understand what that identity is if they're going to step into the life that our Creator designed us to have. And we talked a little bit about the key to stepping into that identity for men is understanding the desires of our hearts. Like the Lord gave us these desires to lead us, kind of like a carrot, to lead us into the life that we're supposed to have and the identity that we're supposed to have. So we talked last week about the core desires of a man's heart. And I want to talk a little bit with you two ladies about what are the core desires of a woman's heart? Because one thing I've noticed, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, men and women are different. Like they're super duper different. And so these desires, I'm just going to guess, are not the same. I'm probably not even close, but I bet they're complementary. Let me throw the ball to you, Sarah. As we're talking about the core desires of a woman's heart, would you lay one of them out on us and then talk a little bit, explain what it is, and also like how did that manifest in your life?
Oh, that's a good one. First off, I'd like to talk about, I guess, the desire to be pursued. And we can see that even in our culture. Yeah, you see it in movies, you see it in our culture, a woman's desire to really be pursued. And that might not always look like romantic relationships. Sometimes that might look like being pursued in your job, being sought after for your own particular attributes and your talents.
Yeah.
It could look like anything really. And, being pursued as a parent, being pursued as a wife, being pursued as a scientist or an artist. And it's just so interesting that God has those desires as well. He wants to be pursued, and he didn't just make us a bunch of robots.
Yeah.
And so that's how we image him. That's just one of the many ways that we image him, because we were made in his image. And that's why we have desires that are like his desires.
Yeah, that's good. And I also I love the fact it's so beautiful that so many of our desires that are God-given, if we follow them, they lead us into life, they lead us into right experiences, but ultimately what we discover is they lead us to him. And so this desire to be pursued, and I'm speaking as a guy talking about a core desire of women, so you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but that desire to be pursued, one thing I've learned in my life is nobody has ever pursued me harder than God has. Like I have been, I could get all emotional thinking about like how clueless I have been and how difficult I have been, and yet he still pursues. And not just he pursued me and he caught me and he's done, he continues to pursue and pursue. Sarah, one more question. Like, how have you felt personally in your life this desire to be pursued manifest itself? Where do you go, oh yeah, I see myself chasing that.
Well, that actually showed up before I started very closely following Jesus. That showed up in my life in a lot of toxic ways, actually.
Yeah.
And until I started to really understand that I was created in the image of God and and asked Jesus to calibrate my desires based on how they should be, and I just started following Jesus and pursuing him, I could actually feel him pursuing me even more because
Yeah.
he will leave the 99 to go after the one. And that's just so true, but it's also my relationship with Jesus has helped calibrate that need to be pursued in a healthy way because that used to be completely centered with my Marine Corps career. It used to have to do with um I don't know, being thirsty for romantic relationships.
Yeah.
And now that looks so healthy in my life because I have a wonderful man in my life. He's my husband and he pursues me. And I'm able to really understand and feel how deeply Jesus pursues me. And I pursue him. It looks so much more healthy and rich and deep and intimate than it used to look in my life.
Yeah. I think we could go pretty deep into that, and we may have to come back and do some more. But for
Yeah.
now, I want you to move on to the next. I actually want you to pass the ball to Kim. What is, Sarah, what is the next of the core desires of a woman's heart? And I'm going to throw it to Kim to explore that a little bit.
Right. The next desire is the desire to fill an essential role.
Oh,
Ah.
Kim, what about
Ha!
that? What is that coming from? And have you seen that active in your life?
So I have seen that active in my life. I don't know if that one has been as active as one of the others. So I've
Of course,
seen
I threw the wrong one to you.
it's okay, totally okay. But no, so I've seen that desire to fill an essential role manifest in my life in the areas of wanting to fill an essential role in the lives of other people, as opposed to in the place of like making these huge feats in your career, these huge accomplishments or accolades. I don't know, that just really hasn't moved me. But the idea of seeing someone being made whole or making a difference in someone else's life, even from a little girl, like I've always wanted to do that. Even like in my relationship with my brother, I have a younger brother. And yeah, so my mom was in the military, and so we moved a lot. And so that meant we had to make new friends and do a lot of stuff, and it means you had to have thick skin, sort of ish. But yeah, so my brother was really small for a long time, all the way until maybe like he was in 10th grade in high school. He was like here to me, or maybe here, but he was never a big kid until that year. And then he grew like, I don't know how many inches, and now he's 6'5" or 6'4". So, but anyway, so we moved a lot, and he oftentimes other kids would make fun of him or pick on him or whatever, and he would come back and say, like him, that kid did this or did that. And it was always me to the rescue. And so playing that essential role, like I see that, but that other than that, outside of the moving in the lives of helping other people, I don't really see that in my own life. But the one thing that I do see very often is I think it's another one of the core desires, having a beauty to reveal. And so oftentimes people will have, they'll see me like on first glance, oh my gosh, you're so pretty, you're so this, you're so that. And so that on my own, like has never been, in my own eyes, has never been an asset, because being having been I don't know, I guess you could say abused at an early age, and seeing that as a thing to attract that type of attention was not a good thing for me. And so always covering it and always trying to keep that thing kind of under wraps and like downplaying it. Never wore makeup, always put my hair in a ponytail, was either in gym clothes or only dressed up for Sunday, or if I was going to work or something like that, trying to minimize the amounts of that attention that would come, not knowing that it wasn't just this external thing. There was something on the inside that I really wanted to be revealed more than what people saw on the outside. And so the more I grew closer to Jesus and he started to peel back the layers of the things that wanted me to keep those things covered and minimize all those things, the more I saw what's on the inside is so much more beautiful than what's on the outside. The outside fades, but what's on the inside, oh my goodness, it is radiant. It is ravishing. And when it is coupled with the Holy Spirit, oh my goodness, it can't be resisted. And so it draws people to Jesus. And like once your heart is connected to him, that's what you really want. That's pretty much all you want. You want everything that you do to draw people to Jesus. And so allowing him to heal the thing that made me want to cover everything, and instead of covering everything, use it to bring people closer to him. Oh my gosh, it was earth shaking, and it was mind renewing, it was earth shaking, and it was life changing. So that is that's definitely one of the core desires that I've seen in my life a lot. A lot.
Well said. And I mean, your story is unique to you, but we hear in this podcast over and over, people share things that are also so universal. I mean, so you have this desire placed in you by God. You're built with it. You couldn't not have it if you didn't want it, to reveal beauty. And you have beauty to reveal, both exterior and interior. And the enemy wounds you. You come from some profound experiences of abuse, and the enemy uses those experiences to shut down the desire that you were given by your Creator, the desire that's going to lead you into the life that he wants you to live and ultimately lead him to you. I mean, that's such a, I hate to say it, it's a common tactic because it works. I mean, to give our enemy some level of credit, he sticks with what works. And that's something that we deal with in ORW all the time. If you've been watching this at all, the deepest work of Operation Restored Warrior in this experience that we call the drop zone is the healing of wounds. And the way those wounds get healed is not through tips or techniques or counseling or coping skills or medication, but it's basically what Sarah said. Jesus shows up. Yes. And the degree to which he shows up and the way he shows up really defies all explanation. So I would like you, Sarah, real quick, we are totally out of time, but I'd like you to share a little bit about your experience of creating a resource called the Drop Zone online. Like you and Kim were both involved in creating this resource that the people watching us right now can go to right now and sign up at this address, www.operationrestoredwarrior.org. Yes?
Yes. Org.
Check this out. So Sarah, tell us just a little bit about this experience and maybe do a little commercial for us. Why should people go there now?
Well, the thing about women is that we will take more time to get our hair done and our nails done and do a skin facial treatment or, whatever it is, or physical fitness, we'll spend more time on those things than we will actually tending to the wounds of our hearts and maintaining our hearts and
Wow.
getting our hearts in line with Jesus. And I just really want to encourage and challenge women to take that time for yourself. Get in a quiet place. Get in your comfy clothes. Get in your bunny slippers. Find your favorite blanket. Drink your favorite hot cup of cocoa, tea, whatever it is. And just really, and take your journal or your notebook and just sit down and go through these teachings. These teachings are so rich and they're inspired by the Holy Spirit and they're biblical. So have your Bible on one side, have your journal on the other side, and just sit there and just be fed. Allow
Yeah.
yourself to be fed. Jesus is calling you and he wants you to go deeper into intimacy with him. And you will, it's not wasted time because you need to fill up. You need to fill up because you have been probably depleted and beaten down and received all kinds of wounds in your heart. And you just may feel like you have nothing left to give. So just go and do this for yourself. Fill up with Jesus and let him just release that pressure from you. And then you're going to have more to give everybody else. So
That's true. That's true. And I agree with everything that you've said, Sarah. The only thing that I'd want to add to what you said is not only is it enriching, not only is it biblical, not only is it going to be a blessing to you in a lot of ways, it's supernatural. There's
absolutely.
just something that goes on in this that defies human explanation. And if you hear me say that and you're like, really, great, take me up on it. You
Yeah.
know?
And
If I'm wrong, call me on it. Go and check it out.
I operated in logic for years and years and years. And I think there's a time and place for that. But the spiritual realm is more real than anything that you experience here. I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kim and Sarah, the only thing that I regret about the time that we've had together is that it's over, and it's not been enough. So I just trust that you're going to come back, and we're going to
Yes.
hear more of your stories and hear more of what you've got to share, because we really need. I want to hear from the two of you in particular, but also in general. We just need some more feminine vibes around here. So I appreciate it. The two of you have brought it, and I really appreciate it. And those of you who've been watching, thank you so much. Take up that challenge. Check out the Drop Zone online, and we'll see you in the next episode.